Chapter 81. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Peter walked out of the room, he saw a strange man in a red tight standing at the stairs, whistling briskly, as if he was completely immersed in his own world. Peter was slightly stunned. This scene was indeed a little unexpected for him. Peter greeted the strange man awkwardly. The man turned his head and showed a bright smile, with a bit of cynicism on his face. Deadpool saw Peter very familiarly, hugged Peter, and then pointed at himself with his thumb. I tell you, your Uncle Ben survived all thanks to my horse spell. His tone was full of pride. Young man, remember that my name is Deadpool. You can also call me Handsome. I personally think that the name of Handsome is more suitable for me. Peter smiled awkwardly at Deadpool and thanked him. Thank you for saving my uncle. My name is Peter Parker. Although Peter did not know the guy who called himself Deadpool and was very curious about his relationship with Chen Ye, he probably saved Uncle Ben for Chen Ye's sake. Peter did not think that he had any ability to let this stranger save people for no reason. After hearing Peter's name, Deadpool's expression became extremely surprised, and his jaw almost dropped. He looked at Peter with excitement in his eyes, and then made a gesture of spraying spider silk. So you can do this, right? Deadpool asked Peter, his tone full of expectation. Peter was stunned by the question. He looked at Deadpool's gesture and suddenly understood something. He also made the same action of spraying spider silk, and a powerful force surged from his wrist, forming a thin spider silk. After seeing this scene, Deadpool smiled with satisfaction. He didn't expect to meet another guy named Peter Parker in this universe, and the other party also has the same ability as Miles. I don't know if Peter, who always shouts to be a superhero in his universe, will become Spider-Man like him in the future. Peter was very curious about Deadpool knowing that he had superpowers. He felt that since he got superpowers, everyone seemed to know about it, whether it was the previous Kamen Rider, the Deadpool in front of him, or even Chen Ye. They all seemed to know his superpowers. This made him eager to know the answer. Deadpool looked at Peter's curious face, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He asked, "Do you want to know why I know you can do this?" Peter nodded after listening. His eyes full of desire. However, Deadpool did not tell him the answer directly. He paused, then said in a joking tone, "I won't tell you. If you want to know, go find Chen Ye yourself. I still want to pick up girls. Bye." As he said that, he pulled his right eye with his fingers and stuck out his tongue to make a funny gesture for Peter to see. Then, he turned and jumped out of the window, leaving Peter standing there alone. Peter looked at Deadpool's back speechlessly and rolled his eyes. He couldn't help thinking in his heart, are all the people here of this character? However, he didn't have time to delve into this question, because his heart was full of desire for answers at this moment. He decided to find Chen Ye to ask clearly. Then just as Peter was about to go downstairs, Deadpool climbed up from the window again. Deadpool put his hands against the window and asked Peter, "By the way, do you also have an Aunt May by your side, a beautiful lady in her 30s who still has charm?" Deadpool was thinking about his own little calculations in his heart. He suddenly thought that if they were both Peter Parker, there might be an Aunt May. If I didn't get to date Aunt May in that universe, maybe I can try in this universe. This thought made Deadpool's eyes flash with a cunning light. Although Peter didn't know why Deadpool asked this question, he still answered honestly, "Yes, I was raised by Aunt May and Uncle Ben. But if I remember correctly, Aunt May is already in her 60s. Maybe you recognized the wrong person." Peter's tone was full of affirmation. He didn't think he would remember Aunt May's age wrong. How could Aunt May with white hair be a lady in her 30s? Hearing Peter's answer, Deadpool's face flashed with disappointment. He originally thought that he could find a new one in this universe's goal, but he didn't expect Aunt May to be much older than he thought. Then, Deadpool disappeared outside the window again. Peter looked at the direction where Deadpool disappeared, and his heart was full of confusion. He didn't understand why Deadpool suddenly mentioned Aunt May, nor why Deadpool was disappointed with Aunt May's age, but Peter didn't pay too much attention. Now he should go downstairs to find Chen Ye. Just as Chen Ye was talking to Dr. Octopus about the future development of Hell's Kitchen School, he saw Peter coming downstairs. Chen Ye stopped talking with Dr. Octopus and smiled at Peter. "Come down." Peter walked up to Chen Ye, his eyes full of gratitude and respect. He bowed deeply and said sincerely, "Thank you for saving my uncle. And, I'm sorry." Peter's "I'm sorry" was said to Chen Ye. Before, Peter had mistakenly thought that Chen Ye was capable but unwilling to save his uncle, so he was dissatisfied with him. However, as things developed, Peter gradually realized his misunderstanding and felt deeply guilty. He waved his hand, signaling Peter not to worry, then he heard the system prompt. Congratulations to the host, Peter Parker, Toby version, friendship has been upgraded to 2 stars. Congratulations to the host. Congratulations to the host, Peter Parker, Toby version, favorability has been upgraded to 5 stars. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the attribute, Spider Sense. Do you want to merge immediately? Yes. Chen Ye answered immediately. Dr. Octopus, who was standing aside, seemed to have deep emotions in his eyes. He looked at Peter and said with a complex emotion, "Hey, Peter, long time no see. You look younger and more energetic now. Keep it up, you have always been a good boy." Dr. Octopus' words were full of expectations and care for Peter, and his eyes flashed with an inexplicable light, as if he was recalling their past. He may have remembered the scene of their first meeting, when Peter was still a curious and passionate teenager. They explored the mysteries of science together and pursued endless knowledge, or, he remembered the moment that made him feel heartbroken. He chose to jump into the river in front of Peter and committed suicide. The determination and helplessness at that moment, but Dr. Octopus was still very happy to see Peter again. Peter seemed to be numb to everyone knowing him, and greeted Dr. Octopus. "You seem to know me too, have we met before?" Peter couldn't help asking. Every word of Peter revealed his inner doubts and anxiety. Peter's mood was extremely complicated, and his mind was full of questions. These questions were like crazy growing vines, entangled in his heart. He wanted to know the truth of all this. He wanted to know why everyone knew him. He was just an ordinary high school student. How could he attract so many people's attention? Chen Ye seemed to see Peter's doubts and said slowly, "Don't worry, not only do we know you, but there is also someone who knows you and wants to see you." Peter looked at Chen Ye with doubts and asked, "Who is it?" Just then, a pile of sand suddenly appeared in front of Peter. These sands should not appear in the living room, but they seemed to have life, slowly condensing together and gradually forming a human figure. Chapter 82. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old man was very happy. "Long time no see, Peter. I'm the Sandman." William Baker, the Sandman who condensed from sand into a human form, spoke slowly, with an indescribable vicissitude in his voice. Peter Parker looked at the Sandman in confusion, with curiosity and surprise flashing in his eyes, and then turned to look at Chen Ye again. "Wow, another person with superpowers, so why does he know me too?" Chen Ye smiled, as if he saw through Peter's doubts. He explained, "Why don't you let the Sandman answer you? He also contributed to saving your uncle." Peter couldn't help but feel ripples in his heart when he heard Chen Ye's words. Although he didn't know who the Sandman in front of him was, after all, he had saved his Uncle Ben. This kindness made him feel good and grateful for the Sandman. The Sandman looked at Chen Ye gratefully. He didn't actually do anything. This Sandman was also a Sandman from a parallel universe. When he learned that he had come to another universe, he immediately found himself in this universe. Then he gave a sum of money to let himself in this universe take the money to treat his daughter, thus avoiding the fate of killing Uncle Ben by accidental discharge. But for some reason, when the Sandman arrived at the scene, Uncle Ben still couldn't escape the fate of being killed by accidental discharge and fell to the ground. The Sandman was stunned. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had obviously changed his fate, so why did Uncle Ben still die? Just as the Sandman was about to step forward to help, Chen Ye appeared and made a deal with him. Chen Ye did not expect to meet the Sandman in this universe. Chen Ye immediately determined that he was from another parallel universe, because according to the timeline, the Sandman would transform into the Sandman only after he had finished his jail term. The Sandman was originally a street gangster. During a jailbreak, in order to escape the police's pursuit, he accidentally broke into the desert nuclear bomb test area in Georgia. In the desert, he was affected by nuclear radiation and merged with the sand to become the Sandman. As for why he was in jail, Chen Ye said that he was the murderer who killed Uncle Ben. Seeing the Sandman, Chen Ye had some ideas in his mind. Maybe he could also pull this Sandman into his team. After all, the Sandman also joined the Avengers for a while. although he later withdrew from the Avengers because of different ideas. Chen Ye was not worried that the Sandman would do something harmful to the world, because he knew that most of the people in the land of Hell's Kitchen were more evil than the Sandman. He believed that as long as the Sandman was given the right guidance and restraint, he would become a sharp weapon in his hands, so Chen Ye traded him to join Hell's Kitchen in exchange for saving his daughter and Uncle Ben in this universe. Sandman looked at Peter with deep guilt and relief, and that complex emotion seemed to reveal his inner world. His low voice echoed in the air, as if carrying a heavy past. In a sense, I am the murderer of your Uncle Ben. Peter's heartbeat accelerated instantly, and his anger burned like a burning flame. However, Sandman's next sentence made him fall into deep doubt. But I didn't mean it. I was ready to give up the idea of carjacking after hearing Uncle Ben's advice, but I didn't expect the gun to go off later, causing your Uncle Ben to die. Although I have explained it once, and the other you has forgiven me. But I still have to say it again. Sandman added, Uncle Ben is not dead, and what about the other? I have forgiven him. Peter doesn't know if he has seen such a person before. If Peter really saw it himself, he would definitely have an impression. After all, the Sandman has a murderous aura, and it is hard not to have an impression. Chen Ye looked at Peter's confused expression and knew that the Sandman's expression did not make Peter understand clearly. He decided to explain it himself, so he slowly said, Peter, do you know the concept of parallel universe? Although Peter usually looks a little silly, his IQ is very high, even comparable to Mr. Fantastic. Under Chen Ye's guidance, he instantly thought of the concept of parallel universe. His eyes widened, and he pointed at Chen Ye and the others in surprise. Are you people from parallel universes? Chen Ye nodded and said seriously, yes, we are all people from different parallel universes. But they and I are not from the same place. That he paused, as if looking for the right words to explain this complex concept. Finally, he said, you can imagine that we are all guests from different worlds, and we all happen to come to your universe as guests. As for why they know you, it's because they have been enemies with you for various reasons. In other words, they are all your enemies. Peter felt embarrassed after hearing what Chen Ye said. He didn't expect to get to know his enemies again in this way. However, he also felt an inexplicable excitement in his heart. This means that in other parallel universes, he has become very powerful, and may even have become a superhero. Peter looked at Chen Ye and asked in confusion, are you too? Chen Ye knew what Peter was going to ask, and smiled softly and replied, you are not worthy of being my enemy. With your skills, any one of us can subdue you. Chen Ye was telling the truth. Peter couldn't beat any of his family members after they were strengthened by him. After hearing this, Peter scratched his head awkwardly, his eyes full of longing for parallel universes. Then can I go to other parallel universes like them? Peter asked Chen Ye. Chen Ye's expression became serious, and he said to Peter, don't think that traveling through parallel universes is a good thing. Next, I will tell you the real purpose of my coming here. In the next half an hour, Chen Ye explained to Peter in detail why he came to this universe and the challenges he would face. Peter was stunned. He had never thought that his world actually hid such a huge secret. He felt unprecedented pressure because he knew that the universe he was in was also facing the same crisis. What should I do next? Peter asked eagerly, his face full of worry and anxiety. He realized that he had a great responsibility and had to work hard to save the universe. Peter did not expect that his universe was facing such a huge crisis. If one was not handled well, the universe he was in would be destroyed. For himself, for Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and for Mary, Peter had to save the universe no matter what. Chen Ye took a sip of tea gently, and his eyes became deep and firm. He spoke slowly, and his voice revealed trust and strength. You just need to do what you have always wanted to do, Peter. We will bear the rest together. What is it? Peter asked, puzzled. At this time, Peter was not in the mood to do what he wanted to do. Saving the universe was the most important thing. Punish the good and eliminate the evil, and be a superhero. Chen Ye answered firmly. Chen Ye believed that as long as Peter appeared in this universe as Spider-Man, the remaining villains in the parallel universes would come out consciously. Chapter 83. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The fire broke out, and the fire was in chaos. On a sunny afternoon, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded on a busy street in the Big Apple. People stopped to watch, and saw thick smoke and flames in the sky in the distance. It was obvious that a building had caught fire, the fire was fierce, and the flames seemed to devour everything. The atmosphere at the scene was extremely tense, the fire truck roared in, and the firefighters quickly got off the car to start firefighting and rescue operations. They wore heavy protective clothing, oxygen masks, and rushed into the fire scene in the heat and smoke. However, the fire was too big, and the firefighters could not get close to the source of the fire, so they could only extinguish the fire from the periphery. At this moment, exclamations suddenly came from the crowd at the scene. Everyone looked up and saw a figure wearing a red tights and a mask, passing through the crowd like a flash of lightning and quickly flying towards the fire. This is the Spider-Man who has recently become famous in New York. Since Peter listened to Chen Ye's words, he has been crazy in the Big Apple City these days to punish evil and promote good. Peter turned into Spider-Man at the fire scene, and his appearance surprised and gratified everyone present. He first used his spider silk skills to quickly shuttle between buildings to find trapped rescuers. In another corner of the fire, a young woman was trapped in the thick smoke. She screamed in fear, and her voice was full of despair. Peter heard her cry for help and immediately flew in her direction. He crossed the sea of fire, avoided the fallen beams and burning walls, and finally came to the woman's side. He stretched out his strong arms, hugged her tightly in his arms, and then used spider silk to send her out of the fire safely. Peter did not stop the rescue. He continued to go deeper into the fire scene to look for other trapped rescuers. With his help, one trapped person after another was successfully rescued. The firefighters were also infected by his heroic behavior. They worked harder to put out the fire and fought together with Spider-Man, and finally controlled the fire within a controllable range. After nearly an hour of intense rescue, the fire was finally completely extinguished. Peter also successfully completed his rescue mission and rescued all the trapped rescuers. Seeing Spider-Man suddenly appear, like a shining star across the sky, the media's enthusiasm was immediately ignited. Countless camera shutters were pressed, vying to capture the heroic figure of this brave Superman. Hoping to become an exclusive headline, flashes came and went, like bright stars, illuminating the entire city. Peter couldn't help feeling a little proud when he saw this scene. After all, he was still young, and he was very happy to be noticed and admired by everyone. He easily posed in several handsome poses and took photos with the media. Mr. Spider-Man, why do you appear frequently in people's sight recently? Do you have superpowers? What do you think about the popular star Taylor being your fan? Why are you called Spider-Man? Don't you think spiders are disgusting? That when the reporters took the photos and picked up the microphone to interview Spider-Man, Peter was still a young man after all, and he was very happy to be praised, but he also knew that he could not reveal his identity, so Peter deliberately said to him in a relaxed tone, "I am your good neighbor Spider-Man, goodbye." After that, Peter did not stop. He quickly fired spider silk and stuck to the tall building. His body jumped up, like a real spider, and disappeared lightly in the sea of people, leaving the media stunned and amazed. It feels so good to be a hero. Peter cheered in his heart. He enjoyed the pleasure of flying in the air and felt the admiration and love of people. This feeling made him feel as if he had become the guardian of the city, full of a sense of mission and accomplishment. However, Peter did not notice that among a group of reporters, there was a pair of eyes staring at him with hatred. The owner of these eyes was Venom Eddie. He was also a reporter and a colleague of Peter from another parallel universe. He lost everything because Peter exposed his fake photo. He blamed all this on Peter, thinking that he had ruined his life. "I thought you didn't exist in this universe, Peter." Eddie thought fiercely in his heart, "Soon I will let you know what it means to be ruined. Let you taste the pain I went through." That he was full of resentment and desire for revenge against Peter, and vowed to make this so-called hero pay the price. Spider-Man, this name has recently been like a shining star in New York City, shining brightly, attracting great attention from the general public and the media. With his extraordinary abilities and fearless spirit, he has become a beautiful landscape in New York City, and various media reports have emerged, telling about his heroic deeds. This of course attracted the attention of his old rival, the Green Goblin. On the top floor of the Osborn building, the Green Goblin has completed the recontrol of the Osborn group. At this time, the Green Goblin was drinking black tea elegantly and looking at the newspaper in his hand. The headline of the newspaper clearly read the report of city hero Spider-Man. And the Green Goblin looked into the distance with a sinister and vicious look. "It's time to find our little spider." When the Green Goblin first saw the report about Spider-Man, he was also very surprised. He didn't expect that there would be Spider-Man in this world, but later he thought carefully, since there is the Osborn group in this world, it is not so strange to have Spider-Man. It just gave him a chance to take revenge on Spider-Man. The Vulture on the side heard the Green Goblin's words and slowly walked forward. I can't wait to find Spider-Man. Let him try the equipment I just upgraded. The Vulture was very glad that he cooperated with the Green Goblin in front of him. Although the Green Goblin was not a good person, with the support of the funds of the Osborn group, the Vulture completed the weapon upgrade. The current Vulture felt that if he met the previous Spider-Man again, he said that he could beat 10 of them. As long as Spider-Man is killed, no one in this world can stop me. The Green Goblin said arrogantly. The Vulture on the side looked at the Green Goblin vigilantly after hearing what the Green Goblin said. Once Spider-Man died, his alliance with the Green Goblin might collapse instantly. After all, based on his understanding of the Green Goblin, he might be the next guy to be killed, so the Vulture also prepared a killer to deal with the Green Goblin, but for now, they still have to deal with Spider-Man together, so the Vulture asked, "Do you have any plans to attract Spider-Man? And what about the Masked Rider?" That the Green Goblin took out 2 photos and said calmly, "As long as these 2 guys are caught, Spider-Man will come naturally. As for the Masked Rider, he hasn't come out for a long time. When the time comes, we will get rid of Spider-Man first, and then join forces to get rid of the so-called Masked Rider." If Peter saw these 2 photos, he would definitely recognize that the 2 photos were his good friend Harry and his goddess Mary. Chapter 84. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a long time, the 2 of them were very happy. Peter returned home, feeling relaxed and expectant. His cell phone suddenly rang. It was a text message alert. Peter curiously checked and found that it was a date message from Goddess Mary and a message from Harry inviting him to visit his home. Peter saw Harry's invitation and didn't have too many doubts. After all, Harry has always been his good friend, and their friendship is deep. Harry often invites him to visit, and they chat, play games, and share life trivia together. The door of Harry's house is always open to Peter, and Peter never feels anything wrong. However, when Peter saw the date message from Goddess Mary, his heart was filled with joy. Peter never thought that his life would become so lucky since he became Spider-Man. He never dared to hope that Mary would take the initiative to ask him out, but now, this surprising news is right in front of him. Peter's heartbeat accelerated, his cheeks flushed slightly, and he had never thought that this might be a scam. Peter looked at the 2 text messages and hesitated for a while. He wanted to go to Harry's house and meet the Goddess Mary as soon as possible. He knew that he should go to Harry's house first, and then go on a date with Mary, so he left home in a hurry and went to Harry's residence. However, when Peter arrived at Harry's house, he found that something was wrong. Harry's house was dark, and the lights were not turned on at all. Peter walked up in confusion and prepared to knock on the door, but found that Harry's door was not locked. Peter felt uneasy. He gently pushed the door open and walked in. The house was silent, with only the moonlight outside the window sprinkled on the floor, which seemed a little deserted. Peter called Harry's name several times, but there was no response. He looked around and found that the house was in a mess, and it seemed that something had been turned over. Peter's heart began to beat rapidly, and he realized that this might not be a simple invitation. Peter gently pushed open Harry's door, and the scene in front of him stunned him instantly. Harry was tied tightly to the ceiling, his face was pale, and he had obviously fallen into a coma. Peter's heart was instantly filled with fear and anger, and he immediately began to look for tools to rescue Harry. However, just as he was concentrating on finding rescue tools, a strong cold wind suddenly blew. From behind, Peter turned his head sharply and saw a figure in a green battle suit looming in the moonlight. He had a cunning smile on his face, and the weapon in his hand flashed with cold light. Peter's heart sank suddenly, and he knew that he had been attacked by surprise. However, he did not retreat, but responded quickly. He dodged the man's attack swiftly, and then angrily said to the attacker, "Who are you and why did you hurt Harry?" His voice was full of anger and confusion. He couldn't understand why someone would hurt his friend. The Green Goblin looked at Peter coldly, with a sneer on his lips. "Little spider, I teach my son a lesson." "What's wrong with that?" Peter was shocked to hear this. "You are Uncle Osborn." "No, how do you know my identity?" "You are from another parallel universe." Peter didn't expect to be recognized. After all, he was not wearing a battle suit now. There was only one explanation, that Osborn in front of him was from another parallel universe. However, the Green Goblin didn't give him too much time to think. He said violently, "I'm not that waste Osborn, I'm the Green Goblin. Little spider, let me have a good time with you." Then he attacked Peter. His movements were swift and powerful, like a cheetah hunting prey. Peter did not retreat. He reacted quickly and started a fierce fight with the Green Goblin. Their figures intertwined in the moonlight, and their fists and kicks made thumping sounds in the air. Peter tried his best to avoid the Green Goblin's attacks. While looking for opportunities to fight back, he knew that he could not let the Green Goblin wreak havoc, and he had to rescue Harry, who was tied to the ceiling. As soon as possible, Peter took advantage of the Green Goblin's inattention, leaped up, clenched his hands, and hit the Green Goblin violently. The Green Goblin was caught off guard and retreated repeatedly. Peter took the opportunity to rush to Harry and quickly untied the ropes that bound him. Harry regained his freedom, his face pale but his eyes flashed with gratitude. Harry was successfully rescued, but the Green Goblin did not have any emotions because of this. That he stood there with a cold smile on his face, as if the rescued Harry had nothing to do with him. His voice was full of provocation and ridicule. "Now with this burden, do you think you can still beat me?" After that, he stepped on the flying skateboard and rushed towards Peter, so fast that people almost had no time to react. Peter looked at the Green Goblin rushing over, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. He knew that it was not wise to fight the Green Goblin head-on with the injured Harry, but he also knew that he could not abandon Harry and put him in danger again, so Peter could only try his best to avoid the Green Goblin's attack. However, the Green Goblin's attack was not without rules. His skateboarding skills were superb, and every attack was like a sharp sword, pointing directly at Peter's vitals. Because Peter wanted to protect Harry, he could only bear many attacks that he could have avoided, so Peter was now covered with scars. The Green Goblin's attack became more and more fierce, and his skateboard drew sharp tracks in the air. Every collision made Peter feel a sharp pain. However, Peter did not give up. He gritted his teeth and tried his best to resist. Harry's heart was full of fear, but he knew that he could not give up at this time. He took a deep breath, used all his strength, and shouted to Peter, "Peter, run away. Don't worry about me. Remember to help me get revenge in the future." His voice echoed in the night sky with a hint of determination and firmness. Peter looked at Harry, his eyes were firm and deep. He knew that Harry was his friend, and his friend was in danger, and he could not abandon him. He stared at Harry closely and replied, "Harry, I will not abandon you. You are my only good friend. How can I watch you fall into danger and ignore it?" Peter's words made Harry's heart surge with a warm current. He did not expect that Peter would so firmly choose to stand with him and face this powerful enemy. His eyes were filled with moving light, and he looked at Peter, his heart full of gratitude and admiration. However, Peter was not shaken by his words. He held Harry's hand tightly, looked into his eyes, and said firmly, "Harry, we are friends, we will not abandon each other. Let us face this enemy together. Whether we live or die, we must be together." The Green Goblin looked at them, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. He thought that the two young people would abandon each other for their lives, but he did not expect that they would choose each other so firmly. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes, but more of disdain and contempt. "Then you will die together. I originally prepared a bigger surprise for you, Spider-Man, but I didn't expect you to be so unappreciative. Then you will die here with Harry." The Green Goblin's words were cold and sarcastic, and there was a twisted smile on his face, as if seeing the death of the two young people could bring him some kind of satisfaction. Then the Green Goblin threw a large number of pumpkin bombs in the direction of Harry and Peter. Harry and Peter looked at each other, their eyes full of despair. They knew that facing the Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb, they had almost no chance of survival. Peter hugged Harry tightly, trying to use his body to block the upcoming bomb for him. Their heartbeats were particularly clear in the silent night, and every beat seemed to tell the passing of their lives. However, just when they were about to die, a voice suddenly sounded. "Why don't you two just stay together?" This voice was like a spring breeze, awakening Peter and Harry from despair. They looked up and saw a young figure slowly walking out of the shadows, with a teasing smile on his face, as if he didn't care about the crisis in front of him. This young man was Chen Ye. Chapter 85. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Green Goblin looked at Chen Ye, who suddenly appeared in front of him, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. His original plan was to blow up Peter and Harry, but now there was one more person, which didn't make much difference to him. After all, whether it was to blow up 2 or 3 people, his purpose was the same. However, just when the Green Goblin was about to detonate the bomb, he suddenly found that something was wrong. The bomb that was supposed to fly towards Peter suddenly changed direction and flew straight towards him. He was shocked. What was going on? The pumpkin bomb changed direction because Chen Ye used magnetic control. Boom! The sound of the bomb exploding was deafening. Peter looked at the explosion in front of him and subconsciously hugged Harry to try to resist the impact of the explosion. However, to his surprise, he did not feel any shock wave. He turned his head in confusion and saw Chen Ye using magnetism to control the surrounding steel to form a solid wall to block the impact of the explosion. Peter looked at Chen Ye with envy in his eyes. He exclaimed, "It turns out that Chen Ye also has superpowers." He had always thought that Chen Ye was just an ordinary person, but he didn't expect that he also had such a powerful ability. However, Chen Ye did not respond to Peter's words. He looked at Peter holding Harry tightly with a little teasing in his eyes. Chen Ye thought that these two people were really true love. No wonder Peter disfigured Harry's face in the movie. Harry still stayed with Peter and helped him solve the problem. Peter looked at Chen Ye's expression and felt a little embarrassed. He realized that he might be a little abrupt. After all, Chen Ye's partners all had superpowers, and he himself should have certain strength. He didn't expect that Chen Ye was teasing them in his heart. Harry's eyes were full of envy and unwillingness. He looked at Chen Ye. Although he didn't know him, he could feel the powerful aura emanating from Chen Ye. Harry began to reflect on himself, why he didn't have superpowers, why he couldn't have the power to change his fate like Peter. Harry longed to have superpowers, so that he wouldn't be tortured by the Green Goblin, and Peter wouldn't be hurt because of him. He imagined that if he had superpowers, he might be able to change his fate, or save his father from falling in front of him. Thinking of this, Harry felt a pang of pain in his heart. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to calm his emotions. He knew that reality was cruel, and he couldn't change the past, but he couldn't give up the future because of it. Chen Ye looked at them hugging each other for a long time without separating, and couldn't help pointing at them. "How long are you two going to hug each other?" Peter and Harry were awakened by his words, and found that they were still hugging each other tightly as if they had just woken up from a dream. Their faces flushed with embarrassment in an instant, and they looked at each other, as if they had thought of something at the same time, and quickly separated. Chen Ye looked at them, a smile on his lips, and said nothing more. He waved his hand, and an invisible magnetic force emanated from his hand, gently moving the steel wall protecting them away. Seeing Chen Ye manipulate the steel so easily, Peter and Harry both showed envious expressions. Peter suddenly disliked his spider ability, thinking that compared with Chen Ye's ability, his ability was simply rubbish. When Chen Ye removed the steel wall, what came into view was the ruins of the explosion, and the Green Goblin lying on the ground, his life or death unknown. Chen Ye did not go forward, but used magnetism to slowly lift the Green Goblin up so that he could see the Green Goblin's condition clearly. Then, looking at the dying Green Goblin, he asked calmly, "I heard that you also prepared other gifts for Peter. I wonder if you can tell me what they are." Although the Green Goblin was seriously injured, he heard Chen Ye's words and only managed to pull out an evil smile and said with difficulty, "Of course it's fun, you'll see it soon." Peter's reaction suddenly became extremely anxious, and a flash of panic flashed in his eyes. "Did you also arrest Mary?" His words revealed deep concern. Obviously, he was extremely uneasy about Mary's safety. Peter's doubts were not groundless. He recalled everything today. It was obviously impossible for Harry to send text messages while he was tied up, so Mary's situation might be just as bad. After all, Mary was not someone who would easily send him text messages. Faced with Peter's questioning, asked, the seriously injured Green Goblin did not answer directly, but let out a creepy laugh. This laugh was full of ridicule and teasing, as if laughing at their ignorance and powerlessness. Although the Green Goblin did not answer directly, Peter and Harry read the answer from his smile and laughter. Their moods suddenly became heavy, and fear and worry spread in their hearts. Chen Ye did not let the Green Goblin go. He continued to ask, "Do you know other people who have traveled from parallel universes like you?" His words were full of vigilance and seriousness. When the Green Goblin heard this question, he was stunned at first, and then laughed again. This time the laughter was more crazy and unscrupulous. Chen Ye saw that the Green Goblin did not intend to answer his question, and did not continue to ask. He pinched it casually, and the Green Goblin's life quietly disappeared in his hands. Before the Green Goblin died, his first personality seemed to take the lead again. He raised his head with difficulty and said to Harry slowly, "Child. I'm sorry." This sentence was full of guilt and regret, as if it was his last farewell to the world. Peter and Harry looked at the Green Goblin's body gradually losing its vitality, and their hearts were filled with complex emotions. Peter was extremely anxious, and the wounds on his body were still aching, but the worry in his heart far exceeded the pain of his body. He struggled to get up and look for Mary, but Chen Ye held him down. "Peter, in your current situation, you would have died in vain in the past." Chen Ye's tone was firm and deep, and his eyes were full of concern and determination. "Leave the next thing to me. I will bring your Mary back safely and intact, you believe me?" Hearing what Chen Ye said, Peter's face turned red. "My Mary. My Mary." Peter whispered in a low voice, his voice full of endless worry and longing. Chen Ye said nothing more, turned around and flew into the sky, and began to search for Mary. Suddenly, the screens and TVs in the entire Big Apple City lit up, and citizens stopped to watch. Chen Ye also looked at the big screen, and saw two people in strange costumes appearing on it. Their figures were particularly eye-catching on the screen. Chen Ye recognized them at a glance. They were Vulture and Venom Spider-Man. Venom Spider-Man Eddie spoke slowly, and his voice echoed throughout the city. "Hello everyone, I am the future superhero star Venom. Today, I want to play a game with Peter, no, Spider-Man." As his voice fell, a picture of a woman hanging on a bridge suddenly appeared on the screen. Her body was shaking in the air, and it looked like she might fall at any time, and Vulture stood next to her, his eyes full of pride and provocation. "You chose to save this lady," Vulture said proudly to the camera. Before he finished speaking, Venom spoke again in another shot. "Or should we save them?" That the camera turned and all the staff in the TV station building were tied up in one place, their faces full of fear and helplessness. Chapter 86. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The venomous Spider-Man Eddie had a sly smile on his face and said coldly to the camera, "Every 5 minutes, I will eat a hostage, so, Spider-Man, make your choice." After his words fell, the whole city seemed to fall into silence, leaving only his laughter on the TV screen echoing in the air. People watched the situation on TV in horror, and silently prayed for the kidnapped TV station employees. Some of them began to call the police, hoping that the police could rescue the poor hostages as soon as possible. Others silently followed the progress of the incident, hoping that Spider-Man would appear as soon as possible to resolve the crisis. Chen Ye watched this scene on TV with interest. He smiled and thought, "This Venom Eddie is quite playful, actually using this method to provoke Spider-Man. However, this is a great opportunity for Chen Ye. Now he doesn't need to look for Mary aimlessly. He doesn't need to make a choice, because he wants to save them all." So, Chen Ye called Deadpool without hesitation and asked him to rescue Peter's goddess Mary. Chen Ye himself flew towards the TV station. Chen Ye quickly crossed the streets and alleys of the city, and his figure flashed quickly in the night. He used his superpowers to easily avoid obstacles and traps on the road and headed all the way to the TV station. 5 minutes seemed to pass in a flash, and the citizens were anxiously waiting for Spider-Man to appear. However, he did not appear as expected. In this tense wait, Venom Eddie's patience gradually wore out. The TV station's live broadcast camera focused nervously on this tense confrontation scene, and the hostages were frightened and pale and trembling. Eddie glanced at them with contempt. And then Venom turned into a tentacle, like a flexible snake, and quickly wrapped around the neck of a TV staff member. He pulled hard, and the staff member was easily pulled in front of him. "It seems that Spider-Man will not come." Eddie laughed sarcastically. "Then, let me show him some color first." As he said, Venom opened his bloody mouth and swallowed the hostage in one gulp, and then said arrogantly to the camera, "5 minutes are up. This is the end of you not coming, Spider-Man. Let us wait quietly for the next 5 minutes." The vulture on the other side also flew on the bridge. On the bridge, Mary was hung tightly by a thick rope, her face was pale, and her eyes were full of fear. The vulture sneered and mocked, "It seems that your Peter will not come to save you." Mary's heart was like being hit by a heavy hammer. She was surprised and scared. Surprisingly, she never thought that the neighbor Peter, who was always dressed in sloppy clothes and a little cowardly, was actually the legendary Spider-Man. And what scared her was that she had never had any good feelings for Peter, and she never thought that she would fall into such danger because of his identity. She looked up at the vulture, her eyes full of pleading, "Please let me go, I really don't know any Spider-Man, I have a boyfriend, and I'm really not familiar with Peter." Her voice was crying, and she just hoped that the vulture would let her go and let her live. Now Mary just wanted to get rid of the relationship as soon as possible, so that she might be able to save her life. However, the vulture ignored Mary's plea, and his face showed a more terrifying smile. He looked down at Mary and said in a joking tone, "Tell me, if you fall from here, can you survive?" Mary heard the vulture's words and looked down at the concrete floor below. It was estimated to be at least 15 stories high, and she would be smashed to pieces if she fell down. Her heart was filled with despair, and she could only keep begging the vulture, "Please let me go, I'll do anything you ask me to do." However, the vulture did not let Mary go because of her plea. On the contrary, he became even more cruel. He looked at Mary with disdain, and then suddenly fired a burst of indiscriminate shots at the ground. The bullets flew in the air, scaring pedestrians on the road to flee. At this time, the police also rushed to the scene and started a counterattack. They surrounded Venom Eddie and the vulture, trying to subdue them with firepower. However, ordinary firepower had no effect on Venom and the vulture. It seemed that their bodies could withstand all attacks, making the police restrain them. There was nothing they could do. Moreover, they each had hostages in their hands, which made the police dare not shoot at will. They were worried about accidentally injuring the hostages, so they could only look for opportunities carefully. However, this passive situation caused the police and special forces to lose a lot of personnel. They were constantly injured in the battle with Venom and Vulture, and some even died unfortunately. Faced with this situation, the citizens were more panicked and desperate. They fled the scene one after another, trying to stay away from this terrible disaster. Venom Eddie's words made the TV station employees present fall into despair. They looked at Eddie helplessly, their hearts full of fear and powerlessness. Eddie enjoyed it. He tried to make people start to hate Spider-Man, and his words were full of provocation and ridicule. "Please remember that you died because of Spider-Man," Eddie said indifferently, as if it was something that had nothing to do with him. His words aroused the anger of the TV station employees, and they began to curse Spider-Man one after another, with resentment and dissatisfaction in their voices. "Spider-Man, you coward! Come and save me, Spider-Man, you rubbish, you are not a superhero, why don't you come and save me?" People watching TV also began to feel dissatisfied with Spider-Man. They originally regarded Spider-Man as the guardian of the city, but now, they began to doubt his ability and courage. At this time, Venom Eddie started his feast. He randomly selected a hostage and swallowed him in one gulp. He showed a happy expression on his face, as if he was enjoying this cruel process. However, just as he was about to eat the second hostage, countless steel bars suddenly attacked him. Eddie easily avoided these attacks, but his face became alert. "Who?" he shouted loudly, his voice full of vigilance and anger. "I saw a figure falling from the sky." It was Chen Ye who had just arrived. He was like a god descending from the sky, exuding a mysterious aura. The people on the TV screen and the hostages of the TV station saw this scene and showed surprised expressions. Their eyes were full of expectation and admiration for Chen Ye, as if they saw the dawn of hope. This mysterious hero might be able to save them from the dire straits and bring them a glimmer of hope. In the crowd, there were even children pointing at Chen Ye floating in the air and asking their mothers in a childish voice, "Mom, is this God?" The innocent words of the children made everyone present feel a little warmth and hope, as if they had found a glimmer of hope in this desperate moment. Chen Ye also heard the voice of the child. He turned his head slightly, and a hint of tenderness was revealed in his eyes. He smiled and replied, "You can call me Chen Ye, but I am not God. If you have to have a title, I would rather you call me the Lord of Hell." Chen Ye's words surprised everyone present. They thought Chen Ye was a messenger sent by God to save them, but he called himself the Lord of Hell. However, although his words were surprising, his appearance brought them hope. They believed that no matter who he was, he had the ability to save them from the dire situation. However, for Chen Ye, he didn't care whether they lived or died. He was just an ordinary person from another universe, and his mission was just to get rid of Venometti and then return to his own universe. He didn't have a selfless heart, nor did he have the great ideal of saving the world. He was just a selfish mortal who only cared about his own mission and goals. Chapter 87. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The two of them were so angry that they had to face each other. Venometti stared at Chen Ye with jealousy. He had been expecting Peter to appear, but he didn't expect to see such an arrogant opponent. This guy who seemed to be ignorant of the world easily took away the attention he had longed for. Venom's heart was filled with cruel murderous intent. He roared at Chen Ye fiercely, "Whether you are God or hell, go to hell." That the voice was full of violence and disdain, as if he wanted to cut the enemy in front of him into pieces. At the moment Venom roared, his body pounced on Chen Ye like a cheetah. The hostages on the side saw this scene and showed horrified expressions, reminding Chen Ye to be careful. However, facing Venom's fierce attack, Chen Ye seemed unusually calm. Chen Ye took out a belt in their surprised eyes. Eternal. As a thick mechanical sound rang out, Chen Ye's body began to emit a dazzling light. After the light dissipated, Chen Ye had transformed into Kamen Rider Eternal. He was wearing a blue and white leather suit, like a ray of sunshine in winter, bringing endless hope to people, and the black cloak, like the brightest star in the night sky, always tightly surrounded him. After the transformation, Chen Ye showed amazing strength. Facing Venom's fierce attack, Chen Ye not only did not show the slightest fear, but instead showed a posture of ease. He easily blocked every attack of Venom, and every resistance seemed to tell Venom that its power was nothing but an ant trying to shake a tree in front of Chen Ye. Finally, Chen Ye launched a counterattack. He kicked out with such force that it seemed to tear the entire space apart. Venom was completely powerless to resist this force and could only watch himself being kicked out. Venom drew a long arc in the air like a cannonball, and finally hit the wall 3 meters away. The huge impact force caused the wall to crack instantly, and Venom fell heavily to the ground under this impact, and was unable to get up for a while. The audience in front of the TV and the hostages at the scene saw this scene and exclaimed and cheered. They looked at Chen Ye, who had transformed into Kamen Rider, in surprise and sighed. "I didn't expect that the real identity of Kamen Rider was actually an Asian man," someone shouted in surprise. "We are saved, it's Kamen Rider." The hostages at the TV station saw the appearance of Kamen Rider and instantly ignited hope. They believed that since Kamen Rider was able to defeat Octopus Monster last time, he would definitely be able to save them from danger this time. In the hospital, Harry also saw this scene on the TV screen. He stared at the screen with his eyes fixed, and said with envy, "I didn't expect Mr. Chen Ye not only has superpowers but can also transform into Kamen Rider. It's amazing." His admiration for Chen Ye was beyond words. Peter also saw this scene, and he was full of gratitude and admiration for Chen Ye. Gratitude is because Chen Ye turned into Kamen Rider to teach him how to use his spider ability so that he can better protect himself. Admiration is because Chen Ye is brave and selfless. He is willing to risk his life to save others. This spirit makes Peter deeply admire. Venometti slowly stood up, looking at Chen Ye, who had turned into a Kamen Rider, in disbelief. "Impossible, how could you be a Kamen Rider?" The scene of Chen Ye's complete crushing of Dr. Octopus in the previous fight still appeared in Venom's mind, although he knew that Chen Ye in front of him was very strong, but he believed that after devouring dozens of people, Venom's own strength had also recovered to its peak. "Just now I was just careless, I won't make the same mistake again this time." Eddie warned himself in his heart. He decided to challenge Chen Ye again. This time he would be more careful and cautious. So, Venometti cautiously attacked Chen Ye. He tried to consume Chen Ye's physical strength through flexible attacks and fast movements, and look for his flaws, but Chen Ye obviously didn't want to give Venom any chance, and pressed the USB flash drive on his belt. "Let's make a quick decision." Chen Ye's voice was low and powerful, full of determination. His right foot began to gather blue flame energy. The flame seemed particularly bright in the night, as if carrying endless power. He suddenly jumped into the air, fell at an astonishing speed, and then performed a flying kick. This night kick was incredibly powerful. Venometti struggled in fear and unwillingness, but eventually ended his life under Chen Ye's powerful force. His roar echoed in the air, full of despair and anger, but eventually turned into silence. The hostages at the TV station cheered when they saw that the enemy who kidnapped them had been solved by Chen Ye. Some of them had tears in their eyes, which was a desire for freedom and gratitude to Chen Ye. The people at the TV station wanted to come over to thank Chen Ye, but Chen Ye had quickly disappeared from people's sight. Chen Ye looked at the dense system prompts. Congratulations to the host, bank employee has successfully added the host as a friend. Congratulations to the host, bank employee be succeeded. Chen Ye laughed. It was worth it that he did not transform into a Cayman rider in advance this time, just to harvest a group of friend points. Anyway, he was ready to return to his own universe, so it wouldn't matter if his true identity was known to others. As time went by, Vulture's patience wore out, and he began to feel impatient with the current situation. He glanced at Mary, who was expressionless beside him, and said coldly, "It seems that Peter doesn't care about you as much as you think. In this case, your existence is of no use to me. So, goodbye, Mississippi." His words were cold and resolute, completely ignoring Mary's desperate shaking of her head and pleading eyes. Vulture raised the gun in his hand without hesitation, aimed at the rope hanging Mary, and pulled the trigger. Bang! With a gunshot, the bullet accurately penetrated the rope and shot it off. Mary's body lost support and began to fall freely from the 15-story bridge. At that moment, Mary closed her eyes, her heart filled with despair. She waited for death to come, waiting for the moment when her body touched the ground. However, just as she was about to touch the ground, a figure suddenly flew up from below and hugged her tightly. This sudden change made Mary open her eyes in surprise. She saw the man in red tights, and his voice was a little teasing. "Madam, you should lose weight. Otherwise, I may not be able to hold you next time." Mary couldn't help but smile bitterly when she heard this. She looked at the man in front of her, and her heart was full of gratitude. She knew that she was saved. When Deadpool safely put Mary on the ground, he turned around and grabbed the double knives, ready to attack the Vulture. Mary looked at the man in red tights who saved her and said shyly, "Excuse me, what is your name? You saved my life, how can I repay you?" Although she didn't know what the man under the mask looked like, for an adolescent girl, she always had a romantic vision of heroes. At this time, Mary thought she had met her true love. Deadpool was indifferent to a beauty like Mary this time, and just said slowly, "My name is Deadpool, no need to repay me, I am not interested in green tea." Deadpool himself was also very surprised. The lady in front of him exuded a strong smell of green tea, which made him not want to attack. Deadpool felt that this woman was not as attractive as Aunt May in his universe, so he should leave this little green tea to Spider-Man. At this moment, Vulture suddenly rushed over from the side, his face full of anger and rage. Deadpool was prepared. He quickly dodged the attack of Vulture, and then fought back. The two started a fierce battle in an instant. Chapter 88. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Vulture circled in the sky. The light of the laser gun flickered in his hand. He aimed at Deadpool and pulled the trigger. The laser beam cut through the air and rushed straight to Deadpool. However, Deadpool was prepared. He flashed and cleverly avoided the laser attack. Deadpool pointed at the Vulture in the sky and shouted angrily, "Can't you come down and fight me? It's hard for me to fight in the sky all the time." The Vulture heard Deadpool's words and showed a disdainful expression on his face. Flying is its talent and advantage. Why should it give up its advantage to fight Deadpool? So it continued to circle in the air and kept shooting at Deadpool. Although Deadpool was dissatisfied, he had to admit that Vulture's flying skills were indeed superb. He could only keep dodging the laser attack and looking for opportunities to counterattack. While dodging, he muttered, "Since you don't come down, I will shoot you down. This is the first time I shoot such a big bird." After a laser attack, Deadpool rushed towards the Vulture with the help of the rebound force. The double knives in his hands drew silver tracks in the air, as fast as lightning. With one knife, he accurately cut off one of the Vulture's wings. The Vulture screamed sharply, lost balance, and fell from the sky. However, Deadpool did not give the Vulture a chance to breathe. He followed closely and cut the Vulture's neck with a knife. Blood gushed out, and the Vulture's life ended at this moment. Its body fell to the ground with a dull crash. After the battle, Deadpool stood there, with blood on his double knives. He took out a towel from somewhere and began to wipe his two swords elegantly. He stared at the dead Vulture, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. "So, why don't you come down? Deadpool turned around and glanced at Mary, who was full of admiration, and said to himself, "Done, call it a day. I should be able to go home now." When Deadpool solved the last villain in the parallel universe, the entire Spider-Man parallel universe suddenly showed strange fluctuations. The universe, which was originally filled with a tense atmosphere, seemed to be pulled by some force in an instant, and the originally distorted cracks in time and space began to heal gradually, as if the wound of the universe was slowly closing. At this moment, the Ancient One, who was in retreat, also felt the strange fluctuations from the universe. She frowned slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. She didn't expect Chen Ye to solve the trouble so quickly, and Strange hadn't had a car accident yet. Master Gui shook her head gently. She hoped that Chen Ye would not cause her any trouble at this critical moment. She knew Chen Ye's ability. He had wisdom and power beyond ordinary people, but at the same time it was full of uncertainty and variables. She was worried that his behavior would break the balance of the universe and bring unnecessary chaos to the world. However, Master Gui also knew that she could not interfere too much with Chen Ye's actions. As a guardian, her responsibility was to protect the peace and stability of the universe, not to restrict Chen Ye's freedom. Spider-Man Alliance Headquarters. In the Spider-Man Alliance Headquarters, the atmosphere was extremely tense. The large screen in the center showed an intricate spider web, which was the mysterious power connecting the fate of all Spider-Men. At this moment, the spider web was abnormal, which made people feel worried. Who has tampered with the web again? Why is Uncle Ben in this universe still alive? Spider-Man 2099, whose real name is Miguel O'Hara, pounded the table angrily, and the sound echoed throughout the room. He is Spider-Man from the future, the leader who founded the Spider League and is committed to protecting the web that connects the fate of all Spider-Men. The other Spider-Men stood silently by, not daring to breathe, for fear of angering the leader. They knew that Miguel was so angry not only because of the abnormality of the web, but also because of his own painful experience. Miguel had lost his daughter, and in another universe, he was killed by gangsters. Before his death, his own self in that universe entrusted his daughter to him. He replaced his own self in that universe and became the father of the daughter of that universe. However, this decision destroyed the web and led to the destruction of that universe. For Miguel, the most important person he lost was every spider. Spider-Man's inevitable fate is the web-weaving incident that he will inevitably experience. He couldn't understand why someone would try to change this fate and save Uncle Ben. This was an unacceptable provocation to him. Spider-Woman on the side hurriedly comforted him with a big belly. Recently, there have been more than one or two abnormalities in time and space. I will send someone to check. Recently, a new female Spider-Man has just arrived. Miguel took a deep breath and tried to calm his emotions. He knew that the most important thing now was to find the culprit who tampered with the spider web. He widened his eyes and said firmly, "The culprit must be found." After speaking, he turned and left the base camp, as if he was ready to go to other parallel universes to look for clues. At this moment, Chen Ye didn't know that he had accidentally caused a lot of trouble again, but if Chen Ye knew, he wouldn't care. Anyway, he was not the culprit, and Miles, the little black guy, was the culprit. Chen Ye's eyes were now fixed on the flashing ring. This should be a signal that he could return to his own universe after completing the mission. Chen Ye first returned to the villa and talked to Dr. Octopus, asking him to prepare to pack up and leave this universe. Dr. Octopus was very excited after hearing this. After all, a brand new universe is very tempting for a scientist, and it is said that there are many beings smarter than him in this universe. Dr. Octopus couldn't wait to exchange technology with them. Then, Chen Ye turned to the Sandman. He looked at the Sandman and said seriously, "In this universe, I have rescued your daughter. You should keep your promise." The Sandman was silent for a while, then nodded, indicating that he would act according to the agreement. He had no worries. After all, Chen Ye was his daughter's savior, and it seemed to be a good choice to follow a powerful person like Chen Ye. Chen Ye also saw from the system prompt. Congratulations to the host, William Baker's favorability has been raised to 3 stars. Congratulations to the host, William Shell's favorability has been raised to full stars. Chapter 89. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Chen Ye returned to his room, he sat on the bed, crossed his hands over his chest, and his eyes flashed with deep thought. He knew that although his trip to the parallel universe took longer than expected, he also gained a lot. He decided to check his results first to better plan future actions. Chen Ye decided to take stock of his gains before leaving. System, how many friends do I have now? Ding. There are currently 602 family points, 5 family points. There are currently 15 family members. Exclusive skills have been successfully upgraded. Exclusive skills, LV2 on your right. The host uses this skill to actively choose to summon 2 family members to the right of the host no matter where they are. Cooldown time, 24 hours. Next upgrade requires 15/20 family members. That when Chen Ye saw the system's prompt, he didn't expect that he had accumulated 10 consecutive draws again, and he successfully upgraded the exclusive skill to LV2. At present, Chen Ye can directly summon 2 family members to his side. Chen Ye began to fantasize that if someone really wanted to surround him in the future, he only needed one skill to summon all his family members and counter-surround the opponent. Such a scene made him smile proudly. However, Chen Ye frowned when he looked at the 15 family members. If he remembered correctly, during this period, Deadpool, Iron Man, Sandman and Dr. Octopus became family members. No matter how you count, there are only 4 people. Where does the 5th person come from? He immediately checked the detailed information of the system and found out that when he was fighting Venom, Peter Parker, that is, Tobey's version of Spider-Man, also became his family member when he saw Mary being saved. It was just because Chen Ye was concentrating on fighting Venom at that time and did not notice the prompt of the system. Seeing this, Chen Ye smiled with relief. It was worth it for him to come all the way to save Peter's fate. I hope that this Peter will not become so cowardly like in the movie. After all, Tobey's version of Spider-Man is also the first superhero of Chen Ye's youth. The next step is the exciting lottery session. Every lottery is very much anticipated. System, convert my friend points into family points. I want to draw a lottery. Chen Ye said proudly. The exchange was successful. There are currently 11 family points. Do you want to draw? Draw them all. Chen Ye also wanted to see if he could collect them better in other universes. Congratulations to the host for drawing a bottle of senzu beans from Dragon Ball. Congratulations to the host for getting the intimate paradise from Naruto. Congratulations to the host for drawing a lost drive. Congratulations to the host for drawing Excel memory. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Congratulations to the host for getting the shining fruit from pirates. Congratulations to the host for getting the Tozen Kaname template from the God of Death. Congratulations to the host for getting the Ultra Instinct from Dragon Ball. Chen Ye held the reward in his hand, feeling mixed emotions. He was originally full of expectations, thinking that there would be at least 8 or 9 rewards in 11 draws, but he only drew 7, which made him a little disappointed. What confused him even more was that there was a reward called Intimate Paradise. If he really needed a Playboy magazine, there would be no better choice. However, overall, Chen Ye was still satisfied. He didn't have many senzu beans in his hand, and this lottery just replenished a wave. He would never have too many magical things like senzu beans. Although he already had the horse charm, senzu beans were still his indispensable backup resource. The lost drive in his hand caught his attention. He already had one, and this time he used Brother A's USB flash drive. Chen Ye thought about it and planned to give this drive to Harry. After all, becoming a Kamen Rider is better than becoming the second generation of the Green Goblin. With this drive, Harry can protect himself and others at critical moments, which is a good choice. The devil fruit is also in his hand. He has never understood why this fruit is not called the diamond fruit, but the shining fruit. However, it doesn't matter. He plans to give this fruit to Uncle Jean Bing. Although Jean Bing Shu is powerful, he is still an ordinary person in the end. After eating this shining fruit, he will have extremely strong defense, which will make him more strengthened. What Chen Ye was most excited about was the Ultra Instinct in Dragon Ball. This ability is even more powerful than the Haki of Observation Haki. It allows all parts of the body to automatically attack and defend reflexively without the need for brain command. In this way, the reaction speed and movement speed will be greatly improved. More importantly, it can separate the body and consciousness, allowing all parts of the body to transcend instinct to perceive the danger around. This ability is simply invincible. Chen Ye imagined his hair turning silver gray in the future, and a satisfied smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Finally, Chen Ye looked at the Dongxianyao template and fell into deep thought. Why is it another blind template? Chen Ye didn't have another blind family member around him, but Chen Ye still said to the system. System, use the Dongxianyao template. That the system immediately responded, looking for a family member matching this template for the host. Chen Ye waited quietly, but the result was not satisfactory. Matching failed. Currently, only 10% of the family members have the highest matching degree, which is not enough to fuse the template. The voice of the system echoed in his mind, making Chen Ye feel a little disappointed. Chen Ye was not surprised to see it. Dong Xian was the captain of the 9th division of the Death God and a pacifist. Chen Ye could think of only one guy who matched the template, and this guy was also from Hell's Kitchen. That was Daredevil, but this guy was not Chen Ye's family member at present. Chen Ye decided to go back and meet Daredevil to see if this guy was to his liking. He had his own principles and bottom line. If Daredevil did not meet his expectations, then even if this card had a powerful ability, Chen Ye would not go against his conscience for it. Chen Ye sorted it out a little, and when Deadpool came back, he could go back to Hell's Kitchen to have a good rest tomorrow. After all, it has been almost a month since I came to this parallel universe, and I still miss home a little. I don't know how Wanda and the others are doing. However, what Chen Ye didn't know was that his rest plan might not be as he wished, because, when he returns to Hell's Kitchen, there is a big trouble waiting for him. Chapter 90. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The morning is full of excitement. Hell's Kitchen. Pietro stood at the door of the apartment, stretched his body, looked at the gray sky, and sighed. It's another boring morning. It has been a month since Chen Ye and Deadpool left Hell's Kitchen for another parallel universe. Although Wanda is still there, she is busy taking over Uncle Jean Bing's business and is often too busy to go home. Pietro is here, except for occasionally helping to look after the store. He only has to play games to kill time, although he also wants to find something new to do. In this familiar yet unfamiliar city, he finds that he seems to have gotten used to this kind of idle life. At the same time, Master Yi takes his daughter to school every day, becoming a beautiful landscape of the Hell's Kitchen Community School. The community college in Hell's Kitchen has completed the formalities, has completed the enrollment and successfully opened. Although Master Yi was not successful as the dean of the school, he was still optimistic and had a silly smile every day. His daughter was also very popular in the school. Her cleverness and liveliness won the love of her classmates. Dr. Ethan worked as a chemistry teacher in the school. He was passionate about this job and enjoyed it every day. Recently, he also invited a friend to come to Hell's Kitchen to be a teacher. The teacher's name was Adrian Toombs, a doctor of electronic engineering. Dr. Toombs had been looking for sponsors to realize his dream of flying. Uncle Jean Bing agreed to his request on the condition that he needed to teach in the school. If Chen Ye saw this doctor of engineering here, he would definitely be embarrassed. He didn't expect that he had just solved the vulture in a parallel universe, and he didn't expect that the vulture in his own universe would come to be his teacher. After retiring, Uncle Jean Bing became the principal of Hell's Kitchen School. His reputation was known to everyone in the school. Both students and parents were in awe of him and dared not make trouble in the school. Uncle Jean Bing enjoys it every day. In the morning, he goes to school to see students and his child Richard, and in the afternoon, he goes shopping with his wife Vanessa. Good morning, Pietro. Good morning, Uncle John. Parker's voice is brisk and full of vitality. He walks down the stairs of the apartment and greets Pietro and John Wick, the security guard of the apartment. His smile is bright, like the morning sun, illuminating the entire corridor. Parker walked to the door of the restaurant, took out dog food from his backpack, and prepared to feed the dog Deadpool. However, no matter how he called or how he tempted, the dog Deadpool lay on the ground, indifferent, as if he had no interest in the food in front of him. Peter, stop making trouble. Hurry up and go to class. The door of the restaurant opened, and Aunt May came out with a serious expression on her face, scolding Parker. Aunt May is now a waiter and cashier at the Good Luck restaurant. Her work is busy and fulfilling, but she still cares about Parker's study and life. John Wick, who was sitting on the side, watched this scene. He said to Parker in a weak voice, "Deadpool doesn't eat dog food. He only eats human food like us." His voice was steady and powerful, giving people a sense of security. Parker looked at Deadpool, then looked at the dog food in his hand, and muttered unwillingly, "It's obviously a dog, but it has to eat the same food as humans." His words were full of helplessness and confusion. Then he shook his head and turned away. Deadpool, who didn't want to argue with the little brat, stood up angrily after hearing Parker's words, and wanted to take out his gun to teach Parker a lesson. Pietro, who was on the side, saw it and quickly stepped forward to comfort Deadpool. "It's just a child, don't be angry, don't be angry." With Pietro's comfort, Deadpool's mood gradually stabilized. He glared at Parker, then sat back down and continued to lie on his stomach. Pietro looked at Parker's back as he left, sighed slightly, and thought, "This kid is so naughty." "John, have you become more lazy recently? Why do you seem to have no interest in anything? You sit here every morning and sit all day. Isn't it boring?" Pietro complained to John Wick dissatisfiedly. The old John, although cold on the surface, at least had some passion for life. He would participate in various activities, showing his unique charm and ability, but now, he seems to be uninterested in anything. Every day, he sits quietly at the door of the apartment like a statue. John's black suit is gone, replaced by the white mink he wears every day. His image has changed so much that people can't help but wonder if this is still the John Wick he once was. Pietro looked at John, feeling helpless. There were not many people at home, and he hoped to go out with John and enjoy the fun of life, but John always refused him for various reasons, which made him very disappointed. He wanted John to play games with him, but John still refused. There was a hint of firmness in his eyes, as if he was immersed in his own world. Since John Wick merged with the template of Wolf Stark, the first blade of the god of death, his personality has become more and more similar. However, John himself does not seem to care about these changes. He enjoys his retirement life, sitting at the door of the apartment as a security guard with a thermos cup every day, watching people coming and going, and enjoying the tranquility and comfort. "This is the retirement life I want, how comfortable it is." John rested his right hand on his chin, with a satisfied light in his eyes. He seemed to have found his own way of life, no longer disturbed by the outside world, enjoying his own peace and satisfaction. However, there are always some people who want to break this peace. I saw a burly man slowly walking towards the restaurant. He was wearing a black suit and looked serious, giving people a strong sense of oppression. He walked to John and Pietro, stopped, and asked in a deep voice, "Excuse me, is Mr. Chen Ye at home?" Pietro turned and looked at the man who asked the question. The man's name was Crossbones. Pietro had seen this man 2 or 3 times this month. "Chen Ye hasn't come back yet. It's not that he doesn't want to see you. Didn't I tell you that you can find my sister if you have anything? My sister can make the decision." Pietro said impatiently. When Crossbones heard this answer, his face changed slightly, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes. He came to win over Chen Ye on the orders of Director Pierce, but he was told that Chen Ye was not at home 2 or 3 times, which made him a little annoyed. He asked coldly, "Then can you tell me where he is? It's been almost a month." Pietro shrugged and lied helplessly, "I really don't know where he is. Sometimes he goes out to travel and is gone for several weeks, and I can't contact him." Pietro knew where Chen Ye was, but he couldn't tell others that Chen Ye was saving other parallel universes. If he wasn't someone who had really seen parallel universes, Pietro wouldn't believe what he said. Crossbones was silent for a while, as if thinking about the next move. He knew the importance of Chen Ye and Director Pierce's expectations of him. He couldn't just give up, he had to find a way to find Chen Ye. At this moment, the door of the restaurant suddenly opened, and a figure walked out. It was Chen Ye himself. After seeing Crossbones, he smiled slightly and said, "Excuse me, are you looking for me?"